What's going on, everyone? So the Miami Heat handled business and blew out the Boston Celtics and sent them home once again. And Boston is now starting to look like a team that just cannot get over the hump, right? They look like many of the great teams we have seen throughout the history of the league that can get there and get close, and year in and year out, they're a legit contender, but can never actually end up contending and winning that chip, right? And once again, Boston falls short in a series that they absolutely should have won. They had the size, the talent, the stars, the everything, right? Game 7 in Boston, and Boston just fell apart. They were worse at home than they were on the road in the playoffs. That is just atrocious. And Boston has a lot of questions to answer this offseason, right? The big one, what do they do with Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum? I do not think, personally, that they're going to be able to win a championship with these two guys as your stars. Maybe they develop in the next 2-3 years and they figure it out, or maybe with the right coach or something like that, maybe they figure it out. But we've just seen what this duo is capable of. And the lack of consistency is a real concern because they don't have that alpha. They don't have that 1A, that 1-2 option. Both are kind of the one option at times. The Boston Celtics are far too predictable offensively. And even Jason Tatum, as great as he is, has almost regressed as a player. He went from being a matchup nightmare and a legit 3-level scorer, maybe one of the best in the entire league, to basically becoming a predictable offensive player. Spot up threes, step back threes, drive into the hoop. That's basically it. The three-level scorer is non-existent now. You know, he's wants to shoot 10 threes a game, and he's a great shooter, don't get me wrong, but the problem is you live and die by the three. And he just completely disappears to the point where he's nearly unplayable at times because he gets into his own head and he just becomes a problem, right? And maybe he gets over that. Maybe he figures that out at some point, but what do you do right now? You have enough blue chip level talent with your stars, but you can't trust your stars. Jaylen Brown last year had all these troubles with dribbling the basketball, and then they all came back this season in the playoffs. And it's like, you need to work on your hand? Did you just not work on your handles this offseason? What? The guy had, 8-9 turnovers by himself? That's terrible. You can't rely on your two stars consistently enough. And especially with Jason Tatum, because he's the guy. He's the best player on that roster. He's not that dog, though. And we've seen a lot of guys that are very talented have to evolve into that dog at some point. But usually they need somebody to teach them that, right? Even LeBron James, he needed Dwayne Wade. Right? He needed Dwayne Wade to basically guide him and show him how to win, right? And the problem is that the Boston Celtics now, for 6-7 years, we know what they are. They're a team that is good enough to get there. They're not good enough to win it. And it's because of their stars. They just have more talent than anyone else, so they're able to at least get there. But then when it matters, they're not consistent and reliable enough to get it done. And you see the predictability in the Boston Celtics. You see the lack of mental toughness in the Boston Celtics, and that is why. And maybe a coach can change that. But even as much praise as Ime Udoka got for what he did with the Celtics last year, a lot of their flaws this year were still there last year, right? Their mental toughness at times. Their ability to show up at times, their lack of execution at times, their mental toughness at times, which is why I thought and I said that the Golden State Warriors would beat the Boston Celtics in the NBA Finals last year because Boston doesn't know what to do and they're too predictable on the offensive end. And when things start going bad, it's a lot of, let's just have Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown isolate and we'll run our offense that way. And it's not a formula for success. It hasn't been. They just don't have enough when it comes to their stars to take them over the hump. And I just think you're not trading Jason Tatum because he's still that guy. He's still great. So you have to trade Jaylen Brown. You just have to. This duo isn't going to be able to evolve. And now, if you're okay as a Boston team, if you're okay with just kind of being a, second, third round exit every year, maybe you get to the finals again at some point. Maybe the chips just fall for you the right way and you get a couple lucky breaks and you win the championship. That could be a possibility. But to be a legit, we can win the championship every single year, they need a coach, right? Joe Mazzulla, look, he was in over his head. He was. I mean, he's as young as half the players in the league. And so if they can go get a coach like a Monty Williams or something like that, I think that would help a lot, right? Because then you have some real coaching, some real guidance, some real, X's and O's type things. Somebody that can manage and control better. That I think would be huge. But I think it's more than that. You need more than just a good coach. Now, because unless you're going to get a Steve Kerr or you're going to get, a Spoelstra or something like that, it's just, you're not going to be able to have that just coach that's going to be able to outcoach consistently enough to, look at Eric Spoelstra. He had less talent. He didn't have the stars. The stars didn't even show up at times in this series, and he was still able to just coach circles around Mazzulla, right? Going and getting a, Monty Williams or something like that. Yeah, he's going to be able to outcoach some of the coaches in the league. But once you start getting to the second, third round NBA finals type things, now you're dealing with coaches that are just as good, if not better than you, right? It's a reason that every year the teams that are in the NBA finals are usually the teams that have the best coaches, right? Because coaching does help. It's not everything, and I've talked about this numerous occasions. The players still have to execute. You can have the best coach ever, but if the players don't show up and execute, then you're not going to do anything. It doesn't matter how good of a coach you have. But you do need a coach that can at least manage the game, because that's what a coach is for. The players execute and play the game. The coach kind of manages it, calling timeouts, making the adjustments, the changes, substitutions, stuff like that, trying to find things that work. So they definitely need a coach. That's a place to start. But beyond the coach, they got to start looking to break these things up. Again, they have more than enough blue chip level talent. They have more than enough guys that they can win an NBA championship with their talent. I just don't think that Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are going to be able to give you enough consistency at the star level that you need to win an NBA championship and beat these teams that have the same level of talent, right? When you get to the the conference finals period, right? Usually those teams have just as much, if not close to the level of talent. Boston should have ran through Miami. It shouldn't even have been close. Miami's playing 7 undrafted guys, and the Boston Celtics down the line look like the Monstars in that regard. I mean, they have blue chip guys at every position, multiple guys at every position, right? And it's this team is insanely talented. So what is the problem? Well, it's because they don't have the reliability of the stars on a nightly basis. Yes, you can have a bad game. Look at Game 6, right? Bam Adebayo and Jimmy Butler were terrible. Both of them were awful. And yet, they were still competitive enough to be in the game because of their talent, because of their roster, because of their depth, right? And it's okay to have a bad game. And look, Miami ended up losing, right? But Boston, it's almost more likely that they're going to just not show up than they are. We've seen it all playoffs long. We've seen Jason Tatum go 2-3 games in a series where he just might as well not even be on the court. Or he'll have 30 in the first 3 quarters, and then you won't see him score again the rest of the game. And it's like, what? Right? Or Jaylen Brown, he'll just be fumbling the ball and all. I just don't think that it's time, if you're the Celtics and Brad Stevens, it's time to go, okay, like we need to start making some real changes here. And the only real change you're going to be able to make is to either go get that alpha, but you can't have an alpha that's just a role guy. Like Marcus Smart is pretty close to that guy, but he's just not talented enough to where Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are going to, kind of submit a bit to them, right? So you need to go either get another guy that can do that and use all your assets or whatever and kind of go get that third guy. Or you got to trade Jaylen Brown to go get that guy. That's just kind of where you're at. Because Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum are they're too similar. They're too friendly. They're too inconsistent to where you can trust that, okay, we're going to win an NBA championship with this roster. How many years, now we're going to be 10 years into it, and it's like, yep, they still haven't done it. Like, at what point do you say, all right, we got to change it up here. We got to do something different, right? Just my thoughts. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion, so I pass the question on you. Let me know yours down in the comments below. Agree with me, disagree with me, however you feel, whatever your thoughts are. Love to hear it. Let me know.